Good afternoon, Sean here, Mountains Garage. If you've been following along on the 71 Nova project, you know that I am mid-project in the middle of a bigger project. The big project is replacing the mono leafs with multi-leaf springs in the back, cutting off the old perches, swapping that over, correcting my pinion angle, and mid-project I decided to move the shocks inboard. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple days. And this is how it went.
Starting day one of the inboard shock project, this was my rear shock. And if I can make the white one fit, it's going to mount just about that much higher. So that's pretty much a wash. So the length should be good. The bottom is 9/16, but I found some 9/16 bolts. So that'll be easy. The top, believe it or not, I have a shoebox full of bushings. And these are actual shock bushings. They are made for that length, width, in the diameter. Fits a 1/2-inch bolt. This is an upper shock mount that I had, and originally was playing with how much angularity you could get out of it. Is that a word, angularity? And you're kind of limited, but it might work. But the old traditional chassis tabs, they'll rotate quite a bit. And that is the correct size hole, 1/2 inch. These I could bore out if I need more length. But I have options. This is the part number for the shock that I used. And you'll have to source an upper bushing for the 1/2-inch bolt. I use 9/16 bolts on the bottom. I'm working around the confines of my tailpipes. I dummied up a shock. I had to bore that hole to 9/16, but that was no big deal. It was already half. And they're going to mount closer to the tailpipe. This is fully extended at the moment, so it's surprising how far back the shock ends up, or how far forward of the center of the rear end you need to be, but I think I have room. I left the shock that mounted to the rear of the axle on for reference, because that kind of gives you an idea where it's going to live. It would be in this way more, but just a rough idea of the angle it's going to be. And using these holes and this holes over here for a sway bar, measuring off those, I've marked both sides. This is a rubber bumper that would hit the center of the rear end, so I'm at least centered on the rear end, if not a little forward. This is on the passenger side. Again, I've used those holes, and these holes are probably as close as I'm going to get, measuring that, and then down from the top of this is just sheet metal. So my idea is to bore straight through. I'm going to hold the 1¼ hole saw as horizontal and square as I can, because these are on an angle. With my idea being running the tubing all the way through both frame rails, and then I can weld to both sides, and then I can actually weld the plate with a hole on it around it too, making it as strong as possible. I've seen kits where they just unbolt this, bolt the shock bracket onto these 2 holes that go into the sheet metal, and if that works, then I'm pretty sure my idea will work. But I mean, that's the rear end, and that's how far forward I am with the brackets and the shocks, the way they have to tilt. It's going to be in the ballpark enough so I can, mod from there if I need to. Because with the shock tight on the brackets, it's leaning this direction. And I can tweak these if I have to. I don't want to, because they're all powder coated, but if it comes to that, we will. If they were a little down this way a little bit, it might be helpful. So I'm at the point of committal in the project. I'm going to get the hole saw and just go for it. Worst case scenario, I have to back half the whole thing and put steamroller tires on it, because I ruined the subframe. Let's hope not. I like it the way it is. We made it across the Great Divide. It's just sheet metal, so it goes really easy. This wasn't even difficult. Now to dummy up the shocks. The dimensions I used were 4 inches from here to here and 1 inch down on center from the lip. I also, as a precaution, lowered my fuel line and my tailpipes. I need to remount the tailpipes anyway, so to prevent any collisions, I just went ahead and dropped them out of the way. Good morning, another day. I went ahead and shined up the sheet metal, heavy place I need to weld to. I left the crossmember a little bit long because I'm going to put a plate on the outside with a hole in it. So I'll weld all 4 sides and then I'll put a plate the outside and weld a doubler on there. With the tailpipes hanging down, I can get in there and MIG weld around there. That's a screw hole right next to that one, but I'll probably fill it right in. I decided I liked the length of these. I took another couple pieces of round tubing and dummied up a shock so I can clamp it, including the piece of wood, to the lower shock mount and locate my uppers. Doing it with the real shock is impossible because they've got gas in them, so they always want to be out. This way it'll sit nice and relaxed and I'll be able to mock it up. I'm going to have to tack it there lightly, and I'll clamp the lower with the block of wood, allowing me to adjust and locate the uppers. Ow. Then I figured out I can wiggle this out of here from the inside out, so I'm going to tack the shock brackets, cut my tack on the outside of the frame, and if I can get it out, I can get it back in. It'll be easier welding on the bench. I could do it in the car, but why? So I dragged the MIG welder over to my already congested work area, getting ready to tack this whole mess together. I've simulated the shock. The wood block holds it out about the depth it's going to be, so this angle's correct. That'll be referenced to the other side, the bottom of the bracket. Top's looking pretty good. I practiced my lean, so it'll miss the tailpipe and whatnot, but still be outboard as far as possible. I'm going to tack the outside here first with a very small tack so it won't be twisting while I'm trying to set my brackets up. And then I'll cut it and remove it after. The MIG welder leaves a pretty big tack, so I use 3/32 ER70S6 and just made a fat bead all the way around. And then I go to my bucket of brackets because I'm going to keep reinforcing it, and that would be fine if this was an actual coilover, but this is just a shock, so I had to pull myself back a little bit. I kind of get carried away. I don't go to a swap meet and pass by any bracket, weld-on bracket. I have 2 buckets of them all organized. But in this case, I'd be wasting my time. In my luck, I'd get it in the car and it would hit something, so I'm just going to call that good enough. It's just holding the shock absorber. It's not a coilover. All right, final result. I like it. Everything lays in there nice and comfortable. When I push this up and push it through, it lays perfectly straight. Better than it did before when I had the outboard shocks. This was at a bad angle already, the way these were made. So I was able to build it around the way it's bent. I jacked my tailpipes back up where they're going to run, so they got plenty of room. You know, plenty's a relative term, but yeah. I like it. I should have done this 3 or 4 years ago. Now when you look under the back, it looks pretty symmetrical. Looks like an old Mopar.
I love the way that turned out. You get past the tipping point where there's no going back. When you stop boring holes in the car, that's where the fun begins. I love doing modifications and improvements in this case because the rear shocks were ill-fitting from the beginning. Next, I have to put a center section in it, put the axles in, put the wheels and tires on, and get the wheels and tires centered in the wheel well on both sides. I've mentioned before, a Nova is not symmetrical on the back, and if I just measure the rear end and weld it there, well, one side's probably going to hit. You need to sneak it around a little bit if you're going to put big rubber back there. And if you wonder why one side of your car, probably the right rear, the tire rubs because you got big rubber on there, because your rear end's not centered. Nobody wants a crooked rear end. So after I get that situated, I can tighten the U-bolts down close, let it down on jack stands, install the dry shaft that I need to make still, and then I can measure the pinion angle. And then tack the axle saddles, take it all apart and weld it, paint everything, and put it all back together. So, sounds like a lot, but it'll go pretty fast. But this video is done for now, the mid-project project. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Ring the bell. Do something. Love you guys. Take care. Bye.